Okay.
We're on?
Yeah, we're on. We're on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, welcome to the next episode of the Steroids podcast. I've got my friend Vadim on the phone today so that we can have another new opinion to share with you guys.
Hello, hello. I'm very grateful to be here today. Thanks for the invite.
So Vadim first got my attention. He's a power lifter from Russia, and he first got my attention because he started sharing with me some unconventional methods for just treating various types of side effects or just ailments that you would experience that were more of like Eastern type of remedies. One thing that he shared with me that really stuck out was he was telling me about a dye called Methylene Blue that helps with like chilling you out and also
which is basically like a blue ink.
Yeah, you were right. You know what you said when you were warning me about don't let this touch anything because anything that touches. I mean, even the toilet, man. You pee because it turns your pee blue, and then the toilet seat's stained blue.
It's hard to say that it's blue. I say that it's like shades of blue and green. It's very interesting. Yeah, hard to describe. You have to experience it by yourself to make an opinion.
So you were telling me, I remember when you first told me about Methylene Blue, you were talking about it as like an antiviral, anti-parasite type of antibacterial type of thing.
Yeah, man. I mean, it has many properties. It's antiviral, it's antimicrobic, it's anti-hypoxia. It helps people with tissue hypoxia, basically. It helps people with serotonin. It has serotonergic activities also. So, well, it's just almost to say a miracle compound which does many things. And well, what got my attention when I was first reading about it, that it is used to treat malaria, and between the doses of like 35 to 70 mgs per day, it is pretty damn effective. And well, it's also used to treat coronavirus, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty effective because there were studies conducted on it, and they were giving Methylene Blue to people who were experiencing corona symptoms who were also in oncology centers in France. And what they figured out that the ones, not the control groups, but the ones who were receiving the Methylene Blue solution, nobody died basically. And we're talking about people with cancer who, well, are they basically have their death sentence, but well, it, to say the least, prolonged their lifespan, which is pretty cool, and it got my attention. And I also figured out that, well, there are many things to discover about it.
You told me about it. I had been sick back in Turkey for like a month. I'd had the flu for about a month, and then you told me about the Methylene Blue, so I went and tried that. And after I took the Methylene Blue for about 1 week straight, all my sickness symptoms went away, and I also noticed at the same time that my mental state was almost impregnable, where I felt I wasn't trying to get this or something. I was only taking the Methylene Blue because I wanted to be better from being sick, but I just started feeling like everything's going to be okay. I'm in control. Everything's. I started getting this really distinct mental feeling, and then I was looking up more about it and seeing that it's a very effective treatment for like depression and bipolar and all this shit. But the thing is that I was buying this stuff at the pharmacy for $1, and which made me think, wow, this is another one of these medications that can't be patented, and so it's just buried.
Yes, because it's so fucking cheap, you can make money with it. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's good that you noticed it. That basically, I would say that Methylene Blue, it works like a pretty mild SSRI. Well, but at the same time, it's important to understand that if you are combining it with some other serotonergic compounds like SSRIs, like 5-HTP, or anything else which raises serotonin, you got to be careful because, well, too much serotonin also isn't good for you. You can end up being like a dummy who just doesn't care about anything, like a person who's like constantly on marijuana.
I had a slight serotonin syndrome from the Methylene Blue, actually, because I took 100 milligrams. I after I really found out that I like this stuff, I started, saying, how far can I push this? So I took 100 milligrams per day for 3 weeks straight. And after about 2 weeks of doing that, I started to notice that like I was very hot. So I had a fever, and I was getting some cramping, and I had like a blood pressure spike, and my heart was beating too hard and too fast for no reason. And
Yeah,
and then that serotonin syndrome, I had that, and then I stopped taking the methylene blue for about 3 days, and it went away.
well, I think it's still smart to have breaks from it because, well, basically it's still, even though it's pretty cool and pretty efficient in solving many problems, it's a synthetic agent. So I think it will build up in your system for time. So the way I use it personally, I just run it 3 weeks straight, and then I take 2 or 3 weeks off. And well, it also, it also helps, as you said, with like some chronic disease. If you have like inflammation in your nose or whatsoever. For me, it does miracles because, well, I live in Moscow and the climate here is not great. And at the same, we get these cars, this air pollution, and whatsoever. So, well, if I go by the seaside, it instantly feels better. But well, here I have to find some remedies. Acetylcysteine, by the way, works also great with it. But I can say that I finally resolved this problem for me. Well, yeah, when I discovered like Methylene Blue, and well, some other agents we can talk about later today, if that's where we're going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Vadim, you guys is a power lifter, and you live in Moscow, like you said. What are the essential powerlifting PEDs? What is the, for somebody who is going to be a powerlifter? What do they have to have? And if they don't have this, it's going to be really hard for them.
Well, first of all, I honestly believe that in terms of like using steroids, there are really some powerlifters in World Powerlifting Federation. I mean, the official one, the International Powerlifting Federation, IPF, which can come away without using like almost nothing. Yes, it can be done. Basically, you can get really strong without pads. It's possible, but you look like shit. Basically, that's what it means. Yes.
So getting extremely fat and building up in a massive amount.
Clear. Yeah. So basically, what you need in powerlifting, you don't need some agents. First of all, that which primary goal would be like to build muscle. You need to recover. And well, as you know, there are not many things which helps your recovery. And basically, what do we have? We have like pads, we have sleep, and we have food. If you exclude pads, all you left is like you have to sleep a lot and you have to eat a lot. And in terms of physique goals, it makes you look like crap, but well, that's achievable. Well, but yeah, that was off topic. As you say, well, what is popular in Russia, in Eastern Europe? I would say that we are probably a little bit more health concerned than our American counterparts. That's what I believe, at least. And I think that basically we use compounds according to what weight category you compete in. Because, well, for example, you're probably expecting me to say that, well, you can use Trenbolone and like the Trenbolone is real deal. But I would say that Trenbolone is not the best solution when we're talking about people in the heavyweights, because Trenbolone, it makes your muscles very tight. It holds water intramuscularly, and it really increases the risk of trauma. This is why, for example, I would say that Trenbolone is mostly used for people who compete in like 75 kgs, 82 kgs, 90 kgs weight categories. But well, yeah, in general.
So not in the heavyweight categories.
In America, people still use
popular.
In America, people still use tren and they like use it a lot and they abuse it. But I would say that in Russia, it's not very popular. What I think like is bread and butter, which makes you strong and really fast, is Anadrol. I think I've shared with you my experience with. I believe that it's a pretty awesome drug if you know how to properly apply it. Yeah, I mean, the hepatotoxicity is a bitch and people are afraid of it. But at the same time, you have to remember that basically it's mostly about the duration on which you are going to use this compound. I would personally say that your liver can, well, be working really hard for not extended period of time. So, if you like compare taking, I don't know, 300 mg of Anadrol for 3 weeks daily, I think it would be a lot better than taking it for 9 weeks, 100 mgs daily. It's, man, it's like with alcoholics, what they say that basically if you're drinking wine every day, it's worse than if you're like drinking vodka once per week. Because
Oh
liver,
yeah.
yes, I mean liver can handle a lot
Regenerative.
of liver can handle a lot of stress in some short time period, but at the same time, if you continue bombarding it with like different things like alcohol or like oral steroids or whatsoever, it will eventually give up, and you'll probably find
That
out
seems
that you have cirrhosis or at least fatty liver disease.
Yeah, that seems to be one of the things that is very unique about the liver is that you take a break from it and it recovers a lot. You can push it, like you were saying, you can push the liver hard for a certain period of time, but then you take a break and it makes a really powerful recovery. A lot of people are afraid of having severe liver damage when only using oral steroids, which is if you're not using other liver toxic substances at the same time, like Tylenol and alcohol, is pretty rare to have like permanent severe liver damage from steroids. It's almost unheard of.
Yes, it's very rare. For people who bitch about that they have, I don't know, like tumors in their liver or whatsoever. These are the guys who are taking Anadrol for like 2 years straight. It's really hard.
Mhm.
It's really hard to make it happen. But well, some
And you do
geniuses.
hear about that,
Yes,
especially with
yes.
powerlifters, like you're saying, because powerlifters love Anadrol so much. You talk to them, they'd be like, "Yeah, I take 2 or 3 Anadrol per day. I've been doing that for the last 3 years."
Well, I think it's a pretty stupid advice and it's a pretty stupid strategy. Firstly, because, well, when we're talking about Anadrol, it's also that great because it has its own effect on your adrenergic system and whatsoever. You understand that when you like take even 100 mg of Anadrol when you've been fresh for like a long time using mild compounds like testosterone and Trenbolone, afterwards you're like stronger 2 or 3 hours for two or
Yeah,
3 hours, you're already stronger. Well, I like
yeah.
figured out that my grip like improves like 10 to 15% even when I start Anadrol. So basically,
There's a
what I
major
was
stimulant. There's a stimulant effect, right?
yes,
You get that really
absolutely,
strong stimulant.
absolutely. This is
Mhm.
why we should probably think about how we could use it like around our workouts to make our workouts more efficient. And well, after 3 or 4 weeks, this effect just goes away. And what Anadrol still gives you is like that bloat. And yeah, you're still stronger, but you don't experience this boost and you don't experience this drive that you've experienced before. So
That that
that's
drive
bullshit.
that
Yes.
drive that you're talking about is one of the premier effects of Anadrol that people love. I've heard many people say my life changed when I discovered Anadrol because of that like drive thing that you're talking about, where they feel like they have a different personality when they take it.
Well, yes, and neurologically, I mean, you adapt pretty fast. And well, afterwards, it just, I don't know, it just goes down regulates to the point where it still has some kind of effect on your sleep. When you're using high doses of androgens, like no matter what it is, even masterone high dosages can give you it. I mean, your REM sleep phase it just gets shorter basically. And with Anadrol, if you're using it for prolonged periods of time, you will just end up burnout. It's like even if we take the liver out of equation here, it's just not efficient use of drug. It must be cycled. It's not something you want to take year round.
What do you think is the best way to use the Anadrol to give the best effect in the powerlifting?
I think it has to be tied to your programming protocols. So, for example, in powerlifting, you're not just using singles, doubles, or triples year round. So, basically, in the off
Rep
season, like
range. You're talking rep
yes,
range.
I mean rep range and peaking phases. So, you're
Mhm.
basically in powerlifting. How cool you are is how cool you compete in the powerlifting meet. So you don't need that extra neurological drive for all the year round. So when you're just, I don't know, working on technique, when you are building up volume throughout the whole year, I think, well, the best things that you can use, it's like coming back to what we've really started to talk about, is like test and Deca, basically. That's the main things which all powerlifters use. If you talk
Mhm.
to the strongest guys like out there, they all say that probably their main steroids that they're using is test and Deca, and well, Dianabol and Anadrol, preferably like due to close to competitions and whatsoever. But yeah, test
These
and
are the
deck
basic,
is like, yes,
basic things.
these are the
You
basics.
need
This is
this.
what's gonna make you strong. This is also Deca also helps you with joints and ligaments inflammation, and it allows you to, well, just build up training volume and still get away with it. And well, it
Mhm.
produces like good recovery. So yes, basically I would say that if anyone, what would be my ultimate go-to stack? Uh, it's like pretty simple. It would be test, it would be an Anadrol, and uh, when we're coming closer to the competition, you will just end up throwing in some Anadrol. Well, the doses, of course, they depend like on your weight, on your, I know, on your total strength and whatsoever. I've never gone higher than 200 mgs per day. Yes, and it was pretty cool. But yeah, I know people who have done like 400 mgs.
With Anadrol, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, the higher dosage is more than 200 milligrams per day. I agree that the benefit really isn't that much, but there is really strong toxicity, even though it's prescribed. Like you were talking 400 milligrams. It can be prescribed for anemia at that dosage. It is
Yeah.
not very tolerable for just a person to take that, though. It will make you not want to train.
Yes, yes. You just become eventually very lazy because of liver toxicity. And well, the bad part about it is how it affects your appetite. And again, you're like if you're in a pretty high weight category, you have to eat like at least 5, 6, 7,000 calories per day. And when, because of this hepatic toxicity, which you experience daily, it's really hard. You just end up, well, looking in your plate like for hours and hours and slowly eating. Well, but I would say it's still pretty tolerable when we're talking about 2 or 3 weeks. So if you're close to a competition or you just want to have a personal record, well, I think like 15, 20 days is doable. It's doable, hard but doable at the same time. But yeah, as we said earlier, doing this year round is like, I don't know, it's like masochism. It's idiocy.
I've seen an interesting effect with some orals, like with Dianabol, Anadrol, Superdrol, where normally when you go on these orals, one of the first things that you notice is, wow, my upper body pressing strength just increased out of nowhere, like magically.
Yes,
But
like the same day.
yeah. But then I've noticed that some people that have been using them for a long time, say guys who have been on D-bol or Anadrol for 3 months plus, some of them have been on it 6 months, 10 months, whatever. When they actually come off, they gain strength again. Like there seems to be almost like an effect where they cross a threshold in their duration of use where it's now hurting their strength gains to continue. And then when they stop the oral, boom, their strength starts going up again immediately.
Well, I think there are mainly two factors which we have to take into consideration here. First of all, that as we mentioned, 3 to 4 months straight of eating any oral would fucking crush your appetite. So your calories probably will go down. And when you stop orals and your liver starts to heal up, well, you will again start flushing down the food. And at the same time, yeah, the central nervous system fatigue because of all this constant adrenal stimulation. It's also a factor. It's also a factor which is contributing to the fact that your 1 rep max or 2 rep max it will eventually will go down because, well, in powerlifting, if you want to lift the maximum weight, you have to be fresh. Your nervous system has to be fresh. And all this constant bombarding of these compounds, which has such a tremendous effect on your adrenergic system, it will definitely ameliorate. It will definitely make things worse long term.
With going talking about that, as going with failure when you're training, that's another thing. I think that a lot of people that are more beginning to training or the first few years, they want to take every set to failure, and they believe that every single time that they lift weights in the gym, every set it has to be to failure, and that's going to get them the most progress. But I think that people that have been more experienced, and especially powerlifters, know that going to failure needs to be totally controlled because of how it affects your recovery.
Yeah, totally agree. I think the bigger the muscle group, the more far away you'll better stay. The more far away you'd better stay out of failure. So, for example, well, if you're training biceps or triceps or whatever, doing like curls, you can go to failure, well, pretty often. It won't affect you. But when we're talking about squats, especially like deep squats, if you train to failure there, you will just you'll end up feeling beat up the next day, and it really affects all your training capability. So
harder to come back and do like super compensation, like come back stronger.
Yeah. You know, even when I train bodybuilders, I really make them go to failure. Yeah, I know, like Dorian Yates and whatsoever, Mike Mansour, they say that you have to go to failure like on every set, and you have to train with really low volume. But I think it's just a training style which just doesn't fit many people. So some people have nervous system which were pretty much, when God was creating them, he was inspired by a tank or whatsoever. They are fucking unbeatable. They are beasts. So they can really push themselves for prolonged periods of time. But for me, for many other people who are not like genetically freaks, I figured out pretty long ago that all this philosophy of always training hard is not right. I think still when you're writing a training plan, when you're figuring out what training protocol you want to use, you have to split it into months and understand, for example, here I'm like pushing volume, here I'm more like on pushing intensity, here I'm probably, I don't know, focusing on like failure sets. And yeah, if you're using failure sets, I would strongly advise people to use machines, because it's just you can go further and then you'll probably not end up being very hurt.
So with your powerlifting training, you really aren't going to failure basically much at all on your compound movements?
We very rarely max out. It's like 90%, 9 out of 10 is like a good effort, and it's not even used every week. It's probably like once a month or whatsoever. Well, it just depends. I personally don't compete anymore because I just don't have time for this. But so I can afford to go into higher efforts during training. For example, like yesterday I was pulling. So what was it? My plan was to pull 700 pounds for 2 reps, and it all just went up, and I just ended up doing. I just think in kilograms. So I'm trying to make it easier for your audience. Yeah, I pulled 720 for 2 reps, and it was pretty decent. It was pretty easy, and I said, like, fuck yeah, let's go try 750. And it almost went up, but I made like a technical mistake and I lost balance. But 85% of the lift was basically done. I just struggled in the lockout. But basically, if I were competing to a competition, I would have never done this, because I know that the stress that I've just put on my nervous system is it's pretty bad, and I would have never done this if I had, for example, any peak weeks ahead. But for me, if I'm not like a competing powerlifter anymore, it's okay. For my students, basically who I train, I would have never allowed such thing like during in the middle of a prep or whatsoever. Because you have to understand that it's like taxation on your body, which you have to pay, and you'll pay it with additional percentages.
So a lot of guys, if you go to a normal gym, just your average gym with just regular weightlifters, some people using steroids, some people not, a lot of the people, almost everyone, is not meeting some actual basic lifting numbers in compound lifts. So there you can say, like, they say 3, 4, 5, as in 3 plates, 4 plates, 5 plates. Being able to do for reps a three plate bench.
It really freaks me out because, I'm primarily a powerlifter, so I'm used to thinking in percentages, and I just think, dude, there's like so much more in between 3 or 4 or 5 and 5 reps and then 5 plates. It's basically idiocy. I think that all these ideas that I'm like benching 3 plates for 10 reps. Afterwards, I'm benching 4 plates for 2 reps. And afterwards, I call like out 3 guys, and we have like 5 plates on the bar. And I'm trying to bench it, and basically they do all the work for me. That's idiocy. That's like bitch thinking. People who advise to do this, they should, I don't know, come off a bridge or whatever.
Oh yeah. I was thinking though about like as far as like having a 3 plate bench for reps, a 4 plate squat for reps, and a 5 plate deadlift for reps. A lot of guys in the gyms can't do that. A lot of guys who have even been taking steroids and training for years are still really having trouble doing that. I'm sure you've noticed the same thing. Just going into a commercial gym, most people are using less.
Absolutely. The paradox which I figured out recently, I think that the internet strength standards are very, very high. For example, on Instagram, if you bench 500 pounds, you're nobody. Because in the internet, everybody's stronger. They just say, well, no, it's basically people have benched 600 and 700. So what's this all about? But at the same time, the opposite fact happens in the gyms because, well, as you said, the gym strength standards are pretty fucking low. Because in a gym, if you like, I don't know, if you bench 3 plates for 1 rep, you're a pretty cool guy. And
yeah. I mean, most people never load the bench press with 3 plates. You're right. That's
yes.
Uncommon.
Yes, they've been like to the gym for 10 years straight, and they've used they had several steroid cycles, and they still can't bench it. So it's horrible.
What kind of advice do you have for these guys? Because you know, this absolute strength is obviously highly correlated with how much muscle mass you have, and
Absolutely.
so a lot of these guys that, you know, they want to be big, they want to be thick, but they just seem to be addicted to these isolation exercises. And, you know, you're trying to get them to try to convince them to say, hey, man, you have got to be able to bench 3 plates for reps. You have got to be able to squat, you know, 4 plates for reps if you want to have big legs or, you know, big upper body, et cetera. And that's very hard for them to internalize this. They don't want to do it. What kind of advice do you have to help them get there?
Well, you know, I'll probably start my answer with my personal story. When I was a teenager and I was squatting, I have pretty long femurs, and well, squats have never been good for me. I've really struggled with this lift, and I was using pretty strong knee reps. I think it was like the yellow Inzer ones. Yeah, that was them. And I was squatting like mile high. It was like half squats, honestly. But with these high squats, I've ended up squatting like nearly 600 pounds for reps. And once I ran into a weightlifter in a commercial gym, and he was like, "The fuck you're doing? What is this? What is this bullshit?" And afterwards, I finished my set, and he finished, I don't know, berating me. He just came to the bar, and it was 600 pounds, well, less, 585, honestly, 260 kgs. And without any warm up, he just walked it out and made like 3 squats without a belt as to the grass. And well, my ego was humbled at this time, and I understood, well, fuck.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah,
that is really impressive.
I probably have to fucking relearn what I was doing for all these years. So that's what I want to answer. First of all, you have to put your ego away. If you're bench pressing, like, you know, this touch and go or bouncing the bar out of your chest, if your ass is not on the bench at the same time, you have to, well, just calm down a little bit and figure out the technique for you, which suits you. Well, because, you know, especially when we're talking about bench press, I think that the common technique which is used, like the wide grip, it is what we learned from powerlifters who usually use the bench shirt. I think that the grip for most people is a little bit more narrow. Basically, narrower grip is the key. So I say, get away and get out from your ego. Just, well, relearn the moving patterns. For example, as like I said, if you're squatting like mile high, well, learn to squat deep. Maybe, well, let your knees pass your toes like a little bit. Have good motor patterns, and just afterwards, don't max out. Learn the movement. Get good with your technique and progress, and that's it. So I honestly think that even naturally, almost anybody can bench 3 plates. What's that? 140 kgs. It's pretty achievable. And if you're doing pads, it's strange if you can do it after several years of using even just testosterone. It's pretty strange.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, it seems like that would be, you know, one of the first things that everybody wants to achieve, but it seems they can't get away from doing this other stuff. I don't understand why they can't understand that the bench, the squat, and the row, the deadlift, you know, these basic exercises is where they're going to get most of their thickness from, most of their muscle mass.
Yeah. Well, basically, because I like started with powerlifting, it really helped me with any other sports, which I was doing afterwards. Because, well, you basically learn how to move and how to utilize your muscle fibers while you're using the big three. For example, well, I would say if you try, well, the evolution away from powerlifting afterwards, well, you'll probably end up switching from deadlifts to Romanian deadlifts because, well, all this, the idea of you ripping the bar off the ground is also, well, taxating on your nervous system. And, well, bodybuilders who are smart enough, well, yeah, they sometimes, well, just substitute the deadlift with a Romanian deadlift or stiff leg deadlift. Well, because it still trains it still trains your glutes, it still trains your hams, but once again, it just removes this part, which is essentially hard to recover from.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, like totally agreed. Well, if you want to do the big free, it will be initially easier to get jacked, a lot easier.
So with in Russia, there's a lot of freaks in Russia that seem to have a different look than Western guys have. And I was wondering if you had any clarity you could help share some clarity on. What is it? Is it growth hormone and insulin that is causing that, or is it Trenbolone? Are growth hormone and insulin pretty popular in Russia? Because it looks
you mean freaks in bodybuilding or freaks?
Bodybuilding freaks. Because we see a different look in Russia than in Western for bodybuilding. And it looks like there's a lot of growth hormone and insulin use going on there. Just wondering what your take on Russian growth hormone and insulin use is.
Well, I think only I can just speculate. Basically, as I said, I honestly believe that in powerlifting we're like a little bit more health concerned. But I think that in bodybuilding we're like left 20 years behind. Maybe 25 years behind, because, well, you remember the 90s, you remember the freaks like Nasser Somebody, the Dorian Yates started all of this, like Paul Dillette. I think that what happened to American bodybuilding like 20, 25, 30 years ago is like what's happening in Russia now. Because nowadays you don't see people with bloated guts, Mr. Olympia. Well, yeah, bodybuilders are a little bit smaller, but they are more into looks, like conditioning, all these 3D effects and whatsoever. They don't just eat so much carbs. They don't use that much insulin because the judging has changed. In the era of Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler, it was about you have to get bigger. Well, Marcus Rule, Günther Schliemkamp, they were very, very popular. But afterwards, with Phil Heath, basically, it evolved to eventually we had like Sean Rodden as a Mr. Olympia, like the guy who is probably the thinnest Mr. Olympia since whom? Since Lee Haney? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. The thinnest waist at the Mr. Olympia, like 100%. So I think in Russia we are like experiencing this syndrome of mass monsters that was very popular in America in the 90s. It means, yes, as we said, like a lot of growth hormone, a lot of insulin, and a lot of calories eventually, and big meals. So I think we just have to evolve through this, and maybe in 5 to 10 years it will go away. But yeah, that's probably that's what you say. Why we have freaks is because we have high resolution photos, which was not available in the 90s, and they were not as common. And at the same time, well, as you say, we're just children here. We just don't understand what it is because, through our conversations, we also like talked about it that all these 90s legends they're just dying off now. Basically, it's not very great when you just inject so much anabolics and so much growth just in yourself at the same time. It's really not good for your cardiovascular system. Really not good for your heart. I mean, left ventricle hypertrophy whatsoever.
Yeah, it is. Would you say that growth hormone is pretty damn popular in Russia? Because it seems like there's a big market for it. It seems to me like it's more popular to use growth hormone in Russia than it is in the West. Would you say that's true?
I think because in Russia it's cheaper. That's like why people use it. That's the main idea which I can come up with. And,
getting growth hormone is easy and it's lower price in Russia.
Yes, like everyone can get it. So, and also, well, as I said, we are really, really, really away from you in terms of biochemistry knowledge. People still here believe that you have to use like 10 to 20 IUs to get checked. And at the same time, well, I listen to like Jordan Peters, I listen to like the big freaks from the West, and all of them like switch to 5-6 IUs basically because they just understand that with growth hormone, when you're already very, very big, it's not like the causation, like the more the better works. It just can make things worse. I personally, when I use growth hormone, I'm a pretty big dude. I'm a little bit, well, that's how many, 140 kgs. It's 310 pounds. If I use more than even if I use more than 4 IUs of growth hormone, well, I just get so fucking bloated. Even if you use the pure one, there's still that factor that it makes you hold up more sodium. It really becomes hard for me to breathe, and well, my endurance go to shit, and my training capacity also, well, just diminishes pretty fast. So
and the hard gut that sticks out, the food digestion becomes so slow.
Yes, all this bloat inside your body, well, in your muscles, in your intestine, basically, it makes you hard to live. I honestly believe that if I would have been smaller, I probably could have got away with lesser dosages, but it's still, I don't know, it still makes me, you know, the word horrified a bit when I hear people say I use like 20 or 30 IUs. I mean, like how? Because even if we say that it's farm grade, which is not basically, it's impossible. Like someone using like 30 IUs of growth hormone would go with like nordytropine or anything like this. Even it's farm grade with water retention, because all of this sodium would be so fucking bad that, well, it would be really hard to even move. So yes.
Actually, I've experimented with that because when I was in Turkey, the genotropin pens there are so cheap. They sell at the pharmacy there. They sell the genotropin pens for 90 USD for 36 IU. And so at one point I said, I'm never going to have this chance again. So I'm going to figure out, exactly, I'm going to push this. And so I took a half a genotropin pen per day for 3 weeks, and so that was 18 IUs a day for 3 weeks. And the if I would eat a single carb, my skin would fill up with so much water that it would be like just even the pressure of my shirt against my arm would create markings on my skin.
Exactly. That's what happens. It's really all these high dosages, all these protocols with very, very high dosages of growth hormone, it just makes it impossible not to even train, but to, well, live properly. I mean, without any discomfort.
I totally agree with you too that the lower dosages of growth hormone are all that's necessary. I have noticed this with Trenbolone and growth hormone both, is that blasting these two compounds is not necessary to get their best effects. Blasting Trenbolone or growth hormone it seems to be almost it's just not helping. If with growth hormone, 3 to 6 IUs is where I think the best effects are had from. And with Trenbolone, I don't think that going above 500 milligrams is very helpful. I would say actually with Trenbolone, 150 milligrams to 350 milligrams per week are the optimal dosages.
Well, it's really hard for me to understand how to really apply Trenbolone. Well, considering everybody reacts different, I just become a dickhead on it, so I don't use it anymore. I'll be better off being like a nice guy to all my friends and family than having that extra bicep or neck vein on me. I'm good without it. Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So I just say, as you said, blasting Trenbolone. If we're blasting Trenbolone, the only purpose that we're probably chasing is we try to get stronger, basically. Yes. And at the same time, if you understand that if you use Anadrol for the same period of time, you'll get stronger than while you're using Trenbolone. That's what just I believe that's what works for me. It works for my students. And as you say, like using it long term, well, it still gives me a question on how you're gonna control the CNS fatigue, how you're gonna counter this blood pressure. It's definitely not something that you want to use year round. So I don't know, like 2 or 3 month cycles. Still, well, it's a very specific drug for very specific individuals with specific goals, I believe. Not for everybody, if you ask me.
Yeah, another reason though why people want to use Trenbolone, in addition to the strength, is that they don't know how to do a diet and they're using it as a crutch. And so then they notice another thing is that, hey, steroids don't burn fat that well. And so, it will do it to a certain extent, especially when you're more of like a novice or a beginner on steroids. They're more effective at burning fat. But then, they'll reach a point where they're like, hey, I'm not getting shredded. I want to be shredded, and I don't know how to do a diet that I can stick to. And so then they'll start pushing the Trenbolone dosage up near like 700 milligrams or 1,000 milligrams per week, trying to become lean from doing that.
Yes, it makes it easier. It makes it easier, basically. Just do it like a bitch and still be lean, relatively lean. Because well, I don't know about America, but well, the raw powder of Trenbolone, which basically everybody buys from China, well, under very rare exception, it still has estrogen in it, some of estrogen, and I believe that's why everybody loves it so much, and that's why it puts so much water into the muscle. And well, chromatographically, me and my friends, we once tested it. So in Russia here. So yes, that's it. In 100 mgs of tren, which like it's a pretty good supplier, which we usually buy from. There is 8 mgs of estrogen, or of what's the form of it? The ethinyl estradiol. Yes, that's it.
Wow.
Which we
so you guys did a chromatography test on it to see what chemicals were inside, and there was actually estrogen added to the Trenbolone powder.
Yes, that's it. And we used even two different products from two different suppliers.
And they both had it.
Yes. Well, we also know we made a trick because we knew that the police would come after us afterwards. But like, what the fuck you're bringing in here? We bought the estrogen in the oil base in the vet pharmacy, and we just took away the stickers from it and put it on tren. So when they phoned us, we said like, we bought it in veterinary basically. What are you bitching about? It still had estradiol in it.
Yeah. Oh man, that's good. So I know
that's how you have fun in Soviet Russia, yes.
We've talked about before about like non-fatty non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, etc., which can be because of diet and everything, or like insulin resistance. But what about for guys that that do wanna lose weight, like for the powerlifting competitions and everything? What do you do to help them do that as far as their diets go?
Well, basically, I just make them do more cardio, low intensity cardio.
Okay, so low intensity cardio is your main source of changing their weight.
Well, yes, because basically we can use clenbuterol, we can use albuterol, we can use whatever, we can use yohimbine, we can use even like very low dosages of DNP. But as I said, like people who I train, I try to make sure that their nervous system is fresh all the time. And if you're throwing in stimulants, well, it just will fuck up the training process initially. So I try to stay away from all the things which spike your adrenaline. Every time when it's possible. Even if I coach people for bodybuilding competitions, the last time I used clenbuterol was like probably in 2017, because as I said, well, clenbuterol makes you stressed out, and when you compare how you can prepare to a bodybuilding show with and without it, eventually you will look better without clenbuterol somehow, even though the diet phase would take a little bit longer. So as you said, well, people just try to throw in like the pills, throw in like new injections when they just don't know what they should do with their diet, and it's like crunches for them. So it's pretty, as I would say, it's the amateur way of thinking. If you're well pretty good on the dieting part, if you know how to utilize cardio, if you know how to utilize training properly, whatsoever, like some vitamins, as we've also spoken about, I think you'll be good even without it.
And another question would be about insulin sensitivity. And so there's definitely like a lot of data and like conflicting studies and stuff that show, hey, eating a high carbohydrate diet is what's going to increase your insulin sensitivity, which then in contrast to that, somebody that has diabetes, which is low insulin sensitivity, type 2 diabetes, usually eating a lot of carbohydrates, it would be exactly the opposite of what is going to help them with their diabetes. For example, they'll take metformin and they'll take insulin for the purpose of removing carbohydrates from their bloodstream instead of building up in their bloodstream. But then you have this science that says the opposite of this, and says these studies that say, oh, insulin sensitivity is increased from eating carbohydrates and decreased from eating fats. What do you make of that whole thing?
Well, have I ever linked you with the studies of the articles which write like this old gentleman whose name is Ray Peat?
No, I haven't seen him.
Well, yeah, that's basically a dude who is, I would say, in terms of metabolic health, he's probably right 85 to 90% of the time. And well, he has like a whole different theory about, well, how you should handle diabetes. And he even says, well, people misinterpret him because, well, he says sugar isn't bad or sugar is good in certain scenarios. Sugar is good for lowering inflammation, which, the fitness zealots, they get freaked about. Like, what? You mean like sugar? But he doesn't mean like go and eat this fucking white sand. He just says that 3 to 4 quarters of orange juice per day is pretty cool for you. It's cool for your liver health. It's cool for your mitochondria. And well, it's going to do good for you over time. But well, what I'm trying to say is that, reading articles and reading studies on the internet, if you're good at just Googling shit, you can prove any point of view that you want, like any. It just comes down to the fact how you can how you can utilize all this stuff and how good you're at talking, basically. A fun fact. So well,
and you've got these pharmaceutical companies who are literally paying for these fraudulent studies to be written.
Yes. So there's so much fucking misunderstanding, and it's really hard for, well, I would say a person who is relatively new here to understand basically what's up. And it all comes down to basic biochemistry. If you don't have a problem processing glucose in your mitochondria, if, well, let's say your cardiovascular health is in check, if you're physically active and whatsoever, then yeah, carbohydrates are good for you, even if you're fat. Well, I could go basically, in Krebs cycle. Yeah, I would just need some translation because still I remember it in Russian, but it will be a little bit hard for me to just retell it in English. What I'm trying to say, that I just don't believe that like there is the only one way out. For example, well, if you have a person, well, if you have like two diabetics who is like they're both having a diabetic state, or at least they have metabolic syndrome, and one of them is 100 kgs and the other is 150 kgs. You pretty much, well, you will agree that the protocols which we're going to apply to them would be different, like distinctly different. So like in the second scenario where we have like a really fat guy, I think that, well, decreasing his carbohydrates would be not a bad idea, basically. And using metformin would be also okay. Which by the way, I don't like metformin. I think I've stated to you before, because, well, metformin basically poisons the mitochondria and doesn't allow it to use glucose. So it's like we're moving towards the path when we are not, well, trying to use the metabolic pathways, and we're just trying to basically make sure that the person doesn't get that much carbohydrates in his system, so he will eventually be more insulin sensitive to it. And well,
very good carbohydrate blocker. That
yes,
for you guys listening, metformin is extremely effective at blocking carbohydrates from coming in.
Yeah, that's why people have to use it with growth hormone, because you don't get that much bloat with it, and that's why it's effective. And growth hormone plus metformin, like in combination, it makes you look very, very much better in terms of days, basically days, or like couple of weeks.
No, you're right. With days, like 3 days, the difference in muscle hardness and fullness, the actual hardness in the muscle when growth hormone and metformin are combined is amazing. It's really part of the puzzle where you see these guys where they have this different muscle shape, this square muscle shape these days when you've got bodybuilders up on a stage and you think, oh, well, all these guys look the same. And you're kind of wondering, how did they get this look? That combination of growth hormone, metformin, and insulin is basically what provides that shape that you're looking at, that square shape.
Yes, exactly. So, and at the same time, well, I believe that if we're talking about a person who is still diabetic, as we say, but he is not at the same time. He is not as fat. Probably, I would not have prescribed him metformin. I would like, try to get away with things like biotin, like the it's B7 vitamin, if I'm not mistaken, which is also pretty good in processing carbohydrates, and it's like the opposite of metformin in terms of it makes your mitochondria eat more of the carbohydrates and will use it to eventually produce CO2, which is great.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, that's what I usually give people when they're having a carb load. Some people stick with ALA, like alpha lipoic acid, but I don't like it long term because it interferes with your iron absorption. Well, it basically just chelates iron and makes you pee it out, which is not great because we need iron, and people who use pads and try to get stronger, try to build more muscle, we just have a higher need in iron. So that's why we even try to supplement it. Well, basically sometimes. Especially all this process of hematopoietic cascades when we use boldenone or when we use Anadrol, it's just fucking diminishes iron from your bloodstream. That's why you need it from the outside. And alpha lipoic acid, even though it's pretty loved by bodybuilders, I would say, but for carb loading it's okay, but using it long term, it will just make you kind of anemic to some point.
So for insulin sensitivity, you prefer vitamin B7 to alpha lipoic acid?
Yes, biotin. I would say it's better.
Biotin. Biotin. What is that? That's a type of B vitamin?
It's what girls use for hair and nails. It just makes it better. But at the same time, it's a pretty cool thing to feed the mitochondria, and it really helps you to utilize glucose more. You'll utilize it for fuel, because I always preach what I preach from the athletic standpoint, and that's why I don't like metformin, because it makes your workouts less efficient, because it just drives you into the state, the sympathetic state, where you're like burning more fat. And if you're burning fat, it's really hard to be strong at the same time, because the taxation on the oxygen is much higher when you're using fats against carbohydrates. But still, I don't say that it's like a bad drug. I don't say that it doesn't have an application. I just don't even believe that there's such a thing a bad or a good drug. I think it's very different scenarios where you can use one things and don't use others. That's just what I say. But different weight categories and even slightly different goals will probably require different protocols to approach it.
Yeah, I'd say that for the guys that are listening to this, if you are a hard gainer, then don't use metformin. If you're somebody who has problems with like binge eating, and you're somebody who has problem, like you're a natural hard gainer, like somebody who's getting way up, increasing their weight all the time, and you're constantly battling to bring your weight back down, that's kind of more the person who I think would benefit from metformin.
Yeah, this guy would benefit a lot from insulin.
From insulin.
Yeah. By the way, the topic that we didn't cover, which is also pretty important in powerlifting, I would say that it's really great when you know how to apply it, is insulin. Because
let's talk about that.
Insulin can make your workouts and recovery from them so much better, just depending on the time. So, for example, if you're using insulin before your workouts, like with your big meal, when you're having dinner or lunch, and afterwards you go to the gym, if you're using insulin and you add like additional carbohydrates, like the glucose, basically, you have to try to stay away from fructose at all costs when using insulin, because fructose has like a pretty short metabolic way when it's like turned into fat. And the insulin, it basically helps it to transform. So yeah, using insulin before workouts could really help you to induce into work all these anti-catabolic cascades, and can make your just workouts more effective because it helps you to store the glycogen. And
pre-workout insulin, so then having like an intra-workout shake and everything, or drink and everything, right?
Yeah. Well, as I do personally, I use insulin with my lunch, and afterwards I take my take my intra-workout shake, which, well, I train for 3 hours straight, so I drink a lot during it. My intra-workout shake is 200 grams of dextrose, which is like simple glucose. You can buy it like in a brewery store or whatever. It's pretty common.
So 800 calories there. That's a big intra-workout drink.
Yeah, but well, I work out for 3 to 3.5 hours, so I have a
You
full
need
body
it.
split. So yeah, so for example, like yesterday I did deadlifts, and as I said, I went up to 750 pounds. Then afterwards I did leg press, and afterwards I did some bench press, and afterwards I made some accessories, and afterwards I had like some, some gymnastic workout or whatsoever. So yeah, I need it. I need it with me. Also, I put there like 220 grams of amino acids. It could be BCAAs, it could be like simple amino acids. Doesn't matter. Just it just helps to folding all this amino acid content in your intra-workout shake. It just helps you to fond all this glucose into your muscles and turn it into glycogen eventually. I use
So
it
you
like
use
in proportion 1 to 10.
You don't use whey protein. You use BCAA.
I use whey protein just before when I go to bed.
Okay.
Never during the day. Yes, and also I add some salt. So it's I say it's 6 to 8 grams of salt, which equates to 4 to 5 grams of sodium during workout. And that's it. That's a pretty cheap intra-workout shake, and it's pretty effective. I don't believe in this, all these complex dextrins, Vitargos or whatsoever. I think they're just a waste of money, because I've used them and I've used dextrose and I got similar results out of both. So I just don't prescribe it anymore.
And so with the insulin then and your workout, I think you covered it how it makes sense using the insulin to load the fuel and the recovery nutrients during your work by using pre-workout.
Well, yes, and afterwards you can use it after workout. Well, just to drive all these anabolic cascades now, and to make sure that all your nutrients and all this glucose that you consumed, it will be stored in the myocytes. Well, so yeah, like the two main, the best timing for insulin is like pre-workout and post-workout. It's, if you're using like 5 to 8 IUs, like 3 to 4 times a day, 5 or 8 IUs 3 to 4 times a week, twice a day, equates to 6 to 8 injections per week. I mean, like the Novoline, the short one, that's a protocol which you can use for a very long time. And if you're not getting fat from it, you will just recover better and you will grow faster. That's how I see
it. Subcutaneous shot with the Novoline.
Yeah, I know. I take it. I usually inject it in my arm, in my bicep, or in my tricep because, well,
you take it intramuscular.
Yes, intramuscular, because it has an ability to induce lipogenesis. If you Google it, you will find that there are pictures of people who just injected it in one spot, and there was like, it's not like a lump, but it's like a swelling from fat, like on their stomach. So I prefer to inject into my arms or somewhere intramuscular because it makes you less fat somehow. I know it's bro science, but well, it just works.
Well, it makes sense because you've got a very much more direct access to the bloodstream going into the muscle, whereas in the fat you're getting a lot of saturation in that general area with insulin before it really makes it into the full main bloodstream.
Yeah, which is not great. And well, it makes sense because you probably noticed the lipoatrophy effect from growth hormone when you're using it locally. So that's why even in the instruction they prescribe it to you that you don't inject it in one spot and you rotate the spots.
It's funny doing that though when you do inject it only into one spot, like to the right side of your belly button every time, and then you're like, wow, the right side of my belly button is lean and the left side is not.
Yeah, absolutely. I've also wondered this because, well, I was just when I was just using growth hormone, I was very tired, like after work, and I was like always using my right hand. So,
so you were talking about with insulin a little bit ago. You were talking about people using it to increase their insulin sensitivity. I think you mentioned something about that.
Well, once I think I probably mentioned to you that I know protocols how people use growth hormone at very, very low doses to increase insulin sensitivity, and there are studies on it. The studies which were
Okay.
like conducted on females, and well, it has to do with how it enhances your circadian rhythms. But well, I'm not sure about the exact dosages which were used in this study, but it was probably 0.3, 0.5 I use before bed.
Okay.
Yes, and they also maybe used melatonin. Well, I have to Google this up basically, but yeah, it was tested and it really works. I personally helped once a person who was in a pre-diabetic state, and I helped him with melatonin, with a little bit of growth hormone, with niacin. And you know, the funny part about niacin, because it's also believed like the drug which induced insulin insensitivity, it makes you insulin resistant. But if we use it in very small dosages, like 50 to 100 mgs, it can basically make your liver relearn when you want to. It can make your liver relearn all this pattern when it just throws away the glucose in the bloodstream. So
I see. So
yeah,
restoring your liver from the metabolic syndrome.
yeah. It also could be part of you know, anti-fatty liver protocol. But for well, I used it to just make sure that all these you know, gluconeogenesis cascades are working properly, and it was a great success. It was like just a friend of mine on whom I made my experiments. And his insulin sensitivity went up, like, you know, without metformin, without berberine, without anything which is supposed to be insulin sensitizing.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, and some other questions I wanted to ask you about. I've noticed that you are very concerned, and something that is you do a lot is taking care of like your blood pressure, your heart, and using medications to do this. So, for you guys that are listening, when we talk about like high dosages in steroid use, you know, you're talking like, you know, a vial of testosterone a week or something like that. You know, like 2,000 milligrams of testosterone a week, and using other bodybuilding drugs. In order to do this at all safely, you have to be keeping your blood markers in range while you do it using other medications. And you have to be keeping your organs functioning well, or else you will run into major problems that, you know, sooner rather than later. So Vadim he's about 300 pounds, and so he definitely has to be very concerned with these things. What do you do to protect yourself? I know you take like I think you take some ACE inhibitors and other beta blockers.
No, not the ACE inhibitors. I take the angiotensin receptor blockers, the ARBs. Because
Okay, so like
ACE inhibitors, yes, ACE inhibitors
that,
can
that kind
give
of
you
thing.
brain fog, and in my work is unacceptable. So yeah, but well, you know, I think that there are still topics which has to be covered. Like people believe that taking care of your blood pressure, taking care of your like, cardiovascular state is all about pills, which it is not. It is not. Well, as we've spoken to David, I'm a big believer in cardio training, like daily, using it to like 40 to 60 minutes of or walking or cycling or whatsoever, or just making sure that your heart works. Usually it pumps the blood. And
Before we talked today, you were on the bike before we talked.
yeah, I was doing my regular 45 minutes. I do it daily, and that's how, you know, even I managed to reverse my left ventricle hypertrophy. Yes, because it was like, I don't know, it was probably 13 to 14 millimeters thick, and now it's more like 11 and a half. So it went much better. Yeah, I had ischemic heart disease when I was a teenager because well, you know, this powerlifter who passed away not long ago, Konstantinov, like the KK.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, the guy who pulled like a lot of kilograms without belt. And kind of the fact that I pull without a belt, it's also kind of a tribute to him. So once there was a time in my life when I had like conversation with him, and he told me that I'm not using enough stuff. He just told me that, well, if I want to be strong, I had to use. To his idea, it was 2 grams of testosterone per week and like 1 gram of Deca per week. Deca, I mean not the NTP, but Deca, the long ester.
Yeah.
And well, yeah, I used a little bit less at the time. I was using 1 gram and 20 mgs of testosterone and 800 mgs of Deca. Well, needless to say, I got a lot bigger. Well, I was still looking like a pig. Well, that's probably.
You said you were using 1.5 grams of testosterone. and you're using 800
gram point
Deca?
2, like gram and 200
Gram
degrees.
point 2. Okay,
Yeah.
and then he told you to increase your dosages, and you did increase
No, I
them
was
to
using
how
even
he
less
said?
before it. I was using even less
Okay,
before.
okay.
He told me
I see.
go straight and use 3 grams, and I was using 2 grams. Well, I didn't quite listen. So I got stronger on this cycle. But at the same time, I wasn't controlling my estrogen. Well, so yeah, I also had a lot of fat, which I was holding afterwards. And I got the ischemic heart disease after 6 months of such a great cycle. Yeah, I got stronger. I pulled 800 pounds for the first time, basically, but it definitely wasn't worth it because afterwards my doctors like told me that, well, dude, that's it. You probably shouldn't be doing it anymore because you will eventually fuck up your heart. And it was, well, yeah, it was
So
very,
what was the main symptom that made you know that your heart was having problems?
well, first of all, that my heart rate, which was like 100 and 110 resting. Well,
That's very high, yeah.
yeah, that's very high. So now it's to compare. It's like resting. It's 65 to 70 basically. Well, while I'm doing everything right. At least I believe I'm doing everything right. Well,
Almost half. Yeah, so you've almost half reduced the strain on your heart, basically.
yeah, that's what I did. So coming back to it, yeah, that's the heart rate, which was through the roof. My blood pressure, which was also through the roof. I tried to use metoprolol, which is a beta blocker at this time, the simplest one. It made things a little bit better, but still, I was breathing very hard. I had sleep apnea, and that was the time before I discovered what a CPAP is, so wasn't sleeping with it. I was sleepy throughout the day, so I could be sitting like at the dining table and just in my phone, and at the same time, just I could have decided that I need to sleep, and I would just pass out for 15 minutes. And then wake up when wake up when my mother or my girlfriend would just disrupt me. It's like, hey, you're like snoring so hard that like the cats or the dogs outside were very scared. Like, just dude, come over it. So yeah, it was pretty bad. And well, what I've done afterwards, I said like, well, I have to do something with it because I was 19 years old, and it's not great when your doctor says like, "Dude, your heart is fucked up." And I started just reading forums. That's when I got like maybe 50% of my expertise on cardiovascular health that I have today for these like 3 to 4 months. And well, I started like surfing for Reddit, started for like I even looked at GH15 at this time. It was still kind of alive and whatever. And I found that many people had this problem. And well, the best solution which I found at this time was like buying a cycling bike, which I use by now. And I was just starting doing cardio, and back then I started to do it like for 1.5 and 2 hours per day. So yeah, I lost a lot of weight. I just got down with the dosages. I managed to, well, yeah, as I said, get significantly leaner. And afterwards, I had like my heart monitored like in a year after this story, and it got so much better. So the doctors couldn't believe, like said, that's fucking impossible. Well, but still it happened. And
so
well,
just from doing the cardio, that made a huge difference.
Cardio, and it was at that time it was that simple beta blocker metoprolol. As we spoke, I said that I switched to nebivolol now, which is that much better because well, it just doesn't hinder your performance, and at the same time, it also helps you with your heart pressure, like initially, and it lowers down your heart rate.
So for you guys that are listening, if you don't know what a beta blocker does, a beta blocker slows down the speed of your heart and then also the strength of the contraction. So the nebivolol that you take now, you like that better than the metoprolol?
It's the most selective one because yes, it just affects the beta 1 receptor, which is like about the heart. It doesn't affect receptors in the brain. It doesn't. It just doesn't pass even the blood-brain barrier. It doesn't affect the beta 2 receptor in your lungs at the same time. So yeah, it just doesn't hinder your performance, and it makes you healthier overall. A wonderful medication.
Mm-hmm. So I've taken a nebivolol to see what it does. Not been a regular user of it, but I've experimented with it, and it definitely drops my heart rate big time. And I would say that if somebody is not used to it, that they're going to notice that they're pretty much going to be on the couch for the rest of the day after using it. Would you say that you had a period of time that it took for you to get used to it until you felt normal using it again?
Really not, because I was the one who's experiencing tachycardia. So nebivolol just brought me to my pulse to the point where it's supposed to be. what you're saying is basically that the person who has a normal pulse, whose heart rate is just fine, it's like 60 to 70. It can give him, this person can receive such thing as a bradycardia. So at his bradycardic state, his heart rate would be like 35 to 40 beats per minute. And yeah, this is why he will just be groggy a little bit.
Okay. I see.
Well, for today, as you said, I'm using ARB. I'm using telmisartan, which, yeah, as we've discussed earlier in our like Instagram conversation, it's more like the kidney care stuff. So if you want a sartan which is more selective in lowering your blood pressure, you probably should go for valsartan or azilsartan. Telmisartan is a really mild one. Azilsartan, yes, sorry. Yes, telmisartan is a lot milder, and it's an ARB, not an ACE inhibitor, which is great. The beta blockers.
Azilsartan will block the angiotensin system more to a more extreme level than telmisartan. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. He's probably the strongest one, when valsartan is the most selective one, which is just operates in terms of blood pressure. Well, so, I think for most people who are listening to us, I think using telmisartan would be pretty much okay. Telmisartan, the mild beta blocker, like low dose nebivolol, it will just do the job for them.
Yeah, and also if it doesn't, because there are so many guys that have high blood pressure. You know, the more that I've been talking to guys about their blood pressure problems in bodybuilding, it's almost universal. There are some guys, especially young guys, who don't have it yet. But it is so common and experienced.
Maybe they just never try to figure out what their blood pressure is. If they haven't measured, they say they don't have it. But probably.
Yeah. So you're saying same. You've noticed the same. It's almost universal problem, the blood pressure.
Absolutely. And they say the young guys who just don't have it, they say I have no issues with blood pressure. Well, if you're a healthy young dude, the 10 to 15% elevation in your blood pressure, you just won't notice it. It just doesn't affect you at all. Like, when you get older, you feel it better. So everybody who believes that he's pretty much okay and have never had any issues with blood pressure, but is on cycle now, it's probably a good idea to go and measure it just once.
What about with the telmisartan, there's also another class of drugs for blood pressure, calcium channel blockers like amlodipine. That is a effective, like a combination with something like telmisartan.
Well, yeah, it's effective, but the problem is that these things, it really gets really deep into the calcium metabolism, all these pathways. And when you stop taking it, it can probably it will upregulate all this calcium sensitivity, receptors in your blood vessels, and they will just calcinate even more for like a short period of time afterwards. So I just try not to use it. For example,
because of the rebound, like a rebound effect. You can't get off once you get on.
Yes. So it's pretty hard. People who are pretty old and were using for a long period of time, I just say, use it. Just stay with it. Don't experiment. But for the younger guys, I just don't see why we should use it when we have all these pretty modern beta blockers, and we have this sartan is like a whole class of drugs. So why would we bother with something which is pretty much kind of obsolete to this point?
Yeah, good advice. And then with diuretics, are you into diuretics with it as well?
Well, yeah, I kind of am, but the diuretics, they usually don't solve the problem of blood pressure. In medicine, the good doctors who understand what they're doing, they give diuretics to people who have like a heart attack or a stroke, so just to decrease the blood volume for a period of time, because the aldosterone, through time it adapts to the moment that you're taking diuretics. So probably like diuretic, as we talk about acetazolamide, like the one which increases your CO2 production and it counters sleep apnea, it could be used like cycling when you are trying to gain mass or like gaining muscle, because you will run up into high blood pressure problems. But again, cycled. I just don't see the place how we can use diuretics like year round. So, I don't think it's a good idea, because again, all this sodium retention, aldosterone induced pathways, they will adapt through some time. It could take several weeks, it could take several months, but eventually people who are on diuretics, that's like one of the few medications to which you can adapt through all these, sodium and potassium retaining mechanisms.
Do you take any medications for your cholesterol too? Whenever anybody is using steroids and they're using oral steroids or they're using Trenbolone, etc., they're gonna have cholesterol problems. So do you do anything to counter that?
Yes, I do. I haven't been doing for the last 2 years because I was using like Anadrol solo, and when you're using Anadrol, your cholesterol is fine. It's like good all the ways. Yeah, and it never changed. I think I even showed you my analysis. Well, I can share it with you. Basically, it was fine. Never using like anything. But now
testosterone, nandrolone, good for cholesterol. Usually not a problem.
Well, yeah, I would say for testosterone, it starts to change when you're like after a gram per week. It's still problematic because so you have to consider something. With nandrolone, I've never like seen anything bad happening to it, like even at 2 grams per week. So it was cool all the way. Well, but now I'm back on testosterone, so I think my first go-to would be niacin, like a little bit of niacin. It makes it better. Well, it has this flushing effect, which people don't like, but well, you get used to it because this prostaglandin-induced response, it will go away like in several weeks after you do it. I use it like with my last meal of the day, and it doesn't very much reduce your total cholesterol, but it increases your HDL significantly. I would say that like 20 to 30% increase is what you would expect while using 500 mg of niacin.
Good cholesterol making a significant surge.
Yeah, which is like the toothbrush for your blood vessels. So you can even use more of niacin, but the more you use, the more it can hinder your glucose metabolism. So I would not advise to go like beyond this. Afterwards, well, if I'm not good with niacin, well, I can probably stick to Ezetimibe. You know it's dark. Ezetimibe. That's a pretty good Swiss medication.
Ezetimibe. Ezetimibe. Okay.
Yes, Ezetimibe. Have you ever heard about it?
I haven't. Usually the cholesterol medications that I'm familiar with are the statins, but I'm not.
Yeah, I was gonna go to statins, but I'm just saying what would be my go-to list. But statin is like the last resort kind of. Well, why I love personally Ezetimibe, it's like the thing which hinders your ability to absorb cholesterol. And still, I would say that 7 to 8 out of 10 people, the cholesterol from within, it affects their total blood cholesterol levels in the blood. So Ezetimibe can lower your LDL like by 30 to 40%, and it's pretty dramatic, honestly. Yeah. Well, yeah, people who try to use it like with metformin for few weeks, they experience mild diarrhea, but it goes away for time. It becomes better because, well, kind of, it's just it just has its own impact on fat metabolism. Well, we all understand that that's what happens to the intestines. That's why you can experience diarrhea. But still, it's good to go. So yeah, as I said, niacin, I would say afterwards, niacin to just up your HDL, Ezetimibe to lower your LDL. So already we have a pretty good atherogenic score at this point. And if this doesn't work, I will just go to some statin. I've personally never used one, but I don't think they're like evil. These are the drugs which save lives. They save millions of lives, and they're like demonized throughout the world.
Something like rosuvastatin would probably be.
Yes, rosuvastatin is like the first choice. Like atorvastatin is like the second. Rosuvastatin is cool because it doesn't pass the blood-brain barrier. So it won't give you brain fog, it won't give you fatigue, but even at the doses of 2.5 milligrams per day, it will still help you with your cholesterol. But I just don't use them often because, as I said, like this combo of niacin and Ezetimibe, it solves the problem well for like 80% of people.
Niacin and Ezetimibe. So that's going to be something that you guys that are listening remember those two because they're very, very effective. Yes. All right, so let's get on to a couple of questions here. There was a couple of really good questions that I wanted to read over, and
yeah, you've sent me it in Telegram, yes?
Okay, yeah. So I'll read them over here, and then we can both put our input in and see if we can help these guys out. Okay, so the first question is from Nicholas, and he asks, can you talk about what those of us stuck in fucking lockdown with gyms closed should be doing? Cycle and dosage. Currently, I'm doing 200 test enanthate and 100 milligrams trenbolone and anthate to try and hold on to some size and offset no exercise and not a fantastic diet. Thinking of adding in 500 milligrams of metformin daily as well. What do you think?
Well, I would have switched Tren for Primobolan if he has access to it, because, well, where are you going to put all this Trenbolone rage if you're like inside of your apartment? Who's going to be your opponent? Like your wife or your cat or your mom? Or
yeah, that's
whatever?
a good point. That's a really good point.
Yes, because you know, like being in a lockdown and using Trenbolone while you're in your apartment, is just, well, I just don't see how it's going to play good for him. So, yeah, what would you say?
Can you still hear me here?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Just making sure. All right, so that you do recommend continuing to use steroids during a person's lockdown to prevent them from losing everything.
Well, basically, if he will try to come off, he will probably just experience depression, because, well, being in this closed, like in four walls, it will still have some toll on you psychologically. So if you will try to get off the cycle at this time, I just don't think it's a great idea. So at least testosterone, that's what I would leave. I wouldn't try to get away from testosterone being locked down.
I agree 100%. And I actually have heard from a lot of guys who, when the lockdowns first started in March 2020, they went off everything. And it caused massive psychological problems in these people, where they had extreme depression combined with emotional eating. And they went from being like seriously jacked to being fat asses. And they've shown me pictures of their transformations during this time. It's been remarkable seeing these kind of pictures.
Yeah, totally agree. I think here metformin is also a good idea, because, well, if you're inside an apartment, it's hard to exercise to your full capacity. So trying to use something which will just automatically, manually decrease your calorie intake throughout the day, it's good for retaining a good body fat percentage.
That's exactly what I think. Metformin's kind of like the garbage man, and it's going to be kind of taking out the garbage on some of that shit that you're putting.
You just shit it out.
Yeah. So I think his dosages are good too. But you recommend Primobolan instead of Trenbolone because he's inside. What he's going to be doing, taking it out on his wife or something.
Absolutely, or maybe just pure testosterone, because, well, I see tren, Anadrol, Dianabol, such stuff is when you're trying to just make a jump forward in terms of muscle mass and strength. And when we're talking about just retaining muscle mass, you don't need such a strong artillery. Just not necessary.
Yeah. I would, so like you were saying, and with the Primobolan dosage, if you did want to use, something in addition to the testosterone, the Primobolan dosage that I would probably recommend him would be 400 milligrams per week, something around there.
Yeah, definitely. I would say 300 to 400. Yeah, because considering he's probably not a very big dude of what he's suggesting.
All right, cool. So let's move on to this next question then. Silverback says, love the podcast, working through every episode. The book Ultimate Guide to Roids is a joy to read. He has two questions, and they're really good, so we're going to go over both of them. He says, I hear you often speaking of Winstrol. He loves Winstrol, used it in cycles with moderate sustanon, 300 milligrams sustanon per week, 100 milligrams per day Winstrol. First 3 weeks, he had incredible strength gains and felt amazing. But then around week 3, all his tendons and ligaments felt like they lost elasticity to the point where when he squatted down, he had a lot of pain. He tried taking joint supplements, but they didn't help much. Then started taking large amounts of ibuprofen to get through workouts before finally dropped the Winstrol from the cycle. He didn't feel like there was any way he could continue running it healthy, and wondering if there's any way that he could get away from that side effect. He doesn't want to use Deca because he gets instant Deca dick. What do you think?
Well, the Winstrol, we're talking about the injectable Winstrol, yes?
He didn't specify, but I think he was only taking 300 sustanon, and so I think this is kind of like a novice, a beginner. So
we assume that it's tablets, yes?
Yeah.
Well, I personally don't think that Winstrol is a good steroid to train with. There was a study conducted on it, but there was injectable Winstrol. Well, to be honest, they compared their testosterone, nandrolone, growth hormone, and Winstrol, and there was also Trenbolone. In terms of how it can uprise your collagen synthesis. And you know who won? Just guess.
Growth hormone.
Winstrol, injectable Winstrol won. Yeah, it did manage to beat growth hormone, and it kind of explains why it really increases your risk of injuries partly. Because when your tendons, when your ligaments, they get so beefed up with all this collagen, just shifted there, they become very thick, very fast. And at the same time, when they're not stretchy, it means that they're more prone to tears. So this is why I would say that hard training and Winstrol is something which should never be used like at the same time. If I give someone Winstrol, if I advise it, I would say that it's just pump light workouts like in the machines and no free weights for again, not very long periods of time. It makes you look sick. It makes you look a lot better. But at the same time, you have to remember that all this, beefed up collagen synthesis, it can be a bitch, honestly. And what our guy here experienced is that Winstrol and all the androgens, but Winstrol in general, is like the stuff which it affects with cyclooxygenase 1 and cyclooxygenase 2. These are the two, how would I say it in English? There's the oxans, maybe. It's not the point. It's like
you're talking about these genes, right? These two genes effects.
Yes, these two genes, let's call them signaling proteins, which are responsible for inflammation. So yeah, that's probably he wasn't right using Winstrol overall, because he says for how long he was using it, 5 weeks.
I think it was longer, wasn't it? It was 3 weeks, and the first 3 weeks he said was amazing, but then after that it got bad for him.
Yeah, that's probably where he probably would have been better off. But at the end of the third week, it would be better if he would have stopped it, this Winstrol cycle, because all this inflammation it can build up through the time. So no ibuprofen can heal it, because at the same it's like you have a scrap, and it tries to heal, and you just pinch it with your nails at the same time. It won't heal. So he's using ibuprofen to trying to prevent the further raise in inflammation markers. And the same he's using Winstrol, who just promotes it by itself, even not the training with Winstrol, but Winstrol itself. It's like why people on Mastron, why people on Winstrol, they can they can experience that their older pains from their older injuries, it comes back slightly, even without them visiting the gym, basically. So he was using it for too long. I think he should just stop using Winstrol. And if he doesn't want to use Deca, he can just use a higher dose of testosterone, 600 mg per week. And maybe that's not an advice. That's what probably I would have done. I would have just not taken aromatase inhibitor and make all this water flow through the joints, through estrogen retention, for several weeks. And once again, probably, yes, he will feel better quickly.
With the Winstrol, I agree that what you were saying about those genes being upregulated in him, and that him personally he just stopped using it, is that a lot of these steroids, they do depend on your specific individual genes, and that's why a lot of the people have to go through taking different types of steroids. There's almost like no substitute for just taking each different steroid yourself and seeing which ones do I feel good on, which ones do I train good on, which
Absolutely.
ones do I feel like shit on, and which ones do I train bad on.
Yeah, like about Winstrol, we in Latvia, which is like my mother's homeland, in my gym where also like Konstantinos trained, there is a guy who did bench 305 kgs raw, and he benched it like without an arch in a pretty bodybuilding style. And the stuff that he was using, his best go-to cycle was Winstrol and Trenbolone. So I would say that fucking everybody, like 199 people out of 200 would have been fucking teared apart. Well, he eventually also teared apart, but he got his injury when he decided that he should have added dexamethasone to the mix because he read somewhere that it would make him stronger. So
Oh, bad.
yeah, as you say,
Anabolic
we all have pretty unique genetics, and some people can get away with a lot of stuff, and some of us have to be intelligent
Mhm.
if we want
Okay.
something from our bodies.
Yeah, that's a good advice. And yes, you guys stay away from catabolic steroids, breaking the steroids that break your body down.
Yeah, like
uh,
glucocorticoid, it's very good. If we say that Winstrol could be good for 3 weeks, I mean dexamethasone could be good for like 3 days, and afterwards it's just a nightmare.
all right, and then his second question is he's currently running a high test cycle, 750 sustanon a week, 300 tren ace per week. So this guy, he's a funny guy,
Yeah.
10 milligrams LGD 4033 and 20 milligrams RAD 140 per day. So SARMS with his steroids.
So
We're getting great progress in my strength and size, but this past week been experiencing signs of liver toxicity, red in the corners of my eyes. And when he says red in the corners of my eyes, I'm almost positive that he's talking about the area where near his nose, where the teardrops are. He says extreme lethargy, like I could literally do nothing but sleep all day, and it takes every ounce of my energy to get up and go to the gym. I'm not taking the orals, so why am I showing signs of liver toxicity? Is there anything I can do besides go off cycle to feel good again? I've decided.
Oh shit, he's 42. Shit.
He's 42. Yeah.
Yeah, not good. Not good.
What do you think about this guy?
Well, I think he liked this quote which Arnold said that champions don't run away from pain; they chase pain in the gym, because it is like explains his cycling philosophy. Well, I think that if he's 42, he must get away from SARS. He must stop using them like immediately because SARMs fuck up your cholesterol like pretty badly. It's like almost like Winstrol. It's probably like the category of drugs which you'll be better off not using after you're 35. That's my opinion on it.
To protect
And
your.
yes. And if he just want to get jacked, and I think that's all he wants pretty much, I would advise him using, maybe 500 mgs of test per week, like 700 mgs of Prima per week, Prima Balance 700 per week, and also throw in some insulin, like as we said, pre-workout and post-workout, and use some growth hormone at low dosages, even not like even every day. What I sometimes people like advice to my advice to people sometimes is to use like growth hormone 5 days a week and like use metformin 2 days a week. For example, from Monday to Friday using growth hormone before sleep, and basically Saturday, Sunday, you have your low carbohydrate days when you also add in metformin before going to bed, and it just spikes up your insulin sensitivity, and you're good to like ingest carbs like for Monday, and once again train hard for the following week.
So kind of cycling their insulin sensitivity there, because the growth hormone during the week is kind of making it
Yes,
less.
it will growth hormone plus insulin during the week. It will hinder it a little bit, but through low carbohydrate days during the weekend, it will be restored. So you're good to go for the following 5 days.
Along with the metformin, low carbohydrates plus metformin.
Yeah, it's like, we talked about it, like fasting like 1 or 2 days and adding like metformin, where it helps. It really helps to neglect all the damage that you've done to your glucose disposal system like throughout the week.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would use, because he's 42. That means that he's using his orals. Any oral will add up pressure to the liver. The pressure to the liver means it wouldn't properly handle the cholesterol. So his blood work would look terrible afterwards. So I would just say, when you are over 40, if you want to get jacked, if you really want it, then you use testosterone, use primobolan, you use a little bit of growth, a little bit of metformin, a little bit of insulin, and that's a pretty good combo. You can get really, really far away with it, and really, it won't affect your health. At least it won't strongly affect it. But I don't know. I told you that I'm a retire when I'm 30, and when I'm 30, I probably won't be using anything more than like 1 vial of testosterone per week. And when I say vial, I mean like vial with 1 milliliter and 250 mgs.
Ample.
Yeah, the ample. Yeah.
So this guy, he was saying that he's got this redness in the corners of his eyes, and this is something that you'll see with a lot of guys who are into roids or bodybuilders, powerlifters, big people. Is you'll see that the color of the whites of their eyes takes on a more red color. And this usually emanates from the part of the eye near the nose where the tear ducts are. And you kind of see this redness come out throughout their eyes. Have you seen that?
Yeah, now I understand that. I've seen it, but I've never put attention to it. But yeah, now I understand what you're meaning.
Yeah. So this is one of those things that is not talked about much, but it's something that we all observe. So I have noticed myself that blood pressure is a major component to this, being that if somebody has high blood pressure, their intraocular or the blood pressure in their eyes also increases, which then increases the visibility of the veins there.
Yes, exactly.
And then the other thing that I've noticed with the you know what, the eyes thing, it's a weird thing. I think the kidneys and the blood pressure are the main things here, because the eyes and the kidneys, they seem to be connected or have some kind of a same origin. When you're in the womb and you're growing, the kidneys and the eyes come from the same piece of tissue, and so the health of the eyes can be like looking at the health of your kidneys. And I've noticed that people with bad kidney function and people with high blood pressure are the people who are experiencing these eye problems the most.
Yeah, they even sometimes look like the people with Hashimoto's, like where their eyeballs like a little bit out of the circle where it's supposed to be. Yeah, I get it. But the guy we're talking about, like his eye problems might be related to SARMS. I can only speculate on this, but once I was young and stupid. Of course, I'm just stupid now. I'm no longer young. I once tried, combining SARMS with SERMs, and I'm a person who has a history of eye disease. I get this accommodation spasm pretty often, and it happens pretty badly sometimes. And when I combined SARMS with SERMs, which had like no point in combining, but I just did it anyways. I got like the worst fucking spasm that I ever experienced. It was, it was really hard for me to even open my eyes. So I had to use special like eye drops, which we use. I just don't remember how they're called. Like for me to even like just start seeing again. So I think we're very aware of the fact that SERMs, especially tamoxifen, they are bad for your eyes. Like in general, they can induce retinal damage over time, and if you abuse them, also they can do it. And I think SERMs do it also. I think it's all somehow related, but well, we don't understand the correct mechanism by which it happens, but it does exist.
There is one of those SARMs, the S4 SARM, is actually known for changing
Like
something.
Andarin, yes, it's called this.
Yeah, Androgen, yeah. That one's changes people's color vision a bit.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I would have never used it, like honestly.
So you're not a SARMs fan. You're not.
No. You know. I think LGD, I think Ride 140 are not a bad thing, but well, I don't see the point why you use them together because well, it just doesn't make any sense. They bind to the same receptor, so I believe if you're into SARM, you'd better use one. I think SARMs are maybe a good alternative to orals in relatively small dosages. If we are dealing with a person who has a problem with like bile exertion, well, first of all, or a person who get nauseous because of like, using like the classical ideas like turinabol, dianabol, or oxymetholone. So yeah, I think SARMs have their own place, but I think they are highly overrated by the people who sell them. Highly overrated.
Yeah. All the people that sell them, pretty much.
I think your best friend, well, he will admit it. Like the one who were your friend back in Thailand before this shit happened to your leg.
Yeah. You know what? But people that don't have anything to do with selling SARMs, I've never heard a single person that doesn't have anything to do with selling them rave about them and think they're the shit.
Well, yeah, honestly, I got a pretty small shop in Russia where we sell GH, we sell clenbuterol, we sell stuff like this, we sell clomifene, and we sometimes sell SARMs. But well, we only sell LGD and we'll sell RAD40 because these are the two substances I believe in, and I think that they have its own place. But I will be like the last person who would say like they're the next big thing, they're the stuff which will, like overthrow the steroids or whatever, because they will never do it. Like never ever. It's just like an anabolic, which it works and that's it. Well, nothing more to it. But once again, I don't see the point while our guy is combining it. He'd better not even use SARMs, honestly, at the age of 40 plus.
Yeah, I like what you recommended him. A bit of testosterone, a bit of primobolan, a bit of growth hormone, and if he wants to use a bit of insulin, he could definitely be more jacked than almost everyone in every gym he goes to.
Well, yeah, I've also read his message, and he said that he's 10 to 12% body fat. So that's definitely a guy who won't be hurt from like just a little bit of insulin. His physique won't be ruined. He will look better, like more fullness and whatever. He'll like it.
So we're just about up at time here, guys. But I wanted to ask Vadim one more question. Do you find any fat loss benefits to insulin? Or do you think that it's used only as something to build size?
Well, I think it's the part where I probably won't agree with like modern Western coaches who say that you use insulin before cardio, so you burn more fat. I just don't see how it happens. Because I'm very big on endocrinology books and what I read, and well, you don't even have to be an endocrinologist and well read about the hormones. You can just open the manual which comes with the insulin pen once you buy in pharmacy, and it is written that it decreases the fatty acid oxidation. So no, in my opinion, well, from what I've read, I just don't see how insulin can make you leaner.
Yeah,
like,
I same from what the studying that I've done. It seems to be something that it opens up cells and it locks nutrients into cells, and that's not the other way around.
Yeah, and you know how I explain it? Because well, when I use insulin, I can get away with eating less calories and still grow, as you said. Like it closes down the nutrients in the cells. You just just your calorie expenditure decreases. So if, for example, I need to eat 6,000 calories to grow, with like using 10 IUs of insulin, I can eat 5,000 calories and still grow at the same time. So that's a pretty valuable instrument right here, which again, once it's applied correctly, it can help you. It can help you with eating less carbohydrates and eating less food in general. So don't just invest in extending your stomach, like forward and in every other turn. And at the same time, yes, still get the necessary anabolic response.
And you mentioned something to me one time about athletes and their insulin use. We know growth hormone and insulin are very important to people who are doing athletics. Not everybody that listens to the podcast, is trying to get big and strong. Some of these guys are just guys playing sports. So for a guy who's playing sports and he's trying to maximize his performance, how would you recommend him to use his insulin?
I would say it would be something between 2 to 4 IUs, well, after hard workouts, basically. Because, well, if you're doing athletics and you use insulin pre-workout, you can get too buffed up. You can, well, get all this sodium inside yourself, which will make you less flexible and will make you hold less water. So it's basically, we're talking about, well, using it in the evenings, well, just to recover throughout the night faster. Because, well, in terms of recovery, I think that insulin pretty much ends up at probably the higher, at probably 6 to 8 units per injection. Everything beyond that is just what we use to retain more water, retain more nutrients, which is also great. It's great for bodybuilding. It's great before powerlifting competitions when you want to be more rounded, when you want to have better angles, like while you're squatting, benching, and whatever. But in terms of even a pure athleticism, in terms when you just want to recover between your working sessions, well, that's not very high doses. In fact, very, very little, and they will still work. They will still make you recover faster.
And you're talking 3 to 5 IUs?
Even sometimes 2 or 3. If we're talking like about people who are 60 or 70 kgs, it will be also okay because it's exogenous insulin. It just doesn't. Well, it doesn't have its own spikes. It just you inject and it's like there for how long it's supposed to be. Like depending on which one you use, like hour, 2 hours.
And which one is your preferred type of insulin with sportsmen?
The shorter ones, the ultra short, like Novolin R, I believe that's the one in English. We use. Maybe you've speak about it while you were like in Ukraine. Like there's this pretty cool, which is called like insulin glucoside. Like it's called Apidra, I believe. And I don't know how they've done it, but it's just more effective unit per unit somehow.
Interesting.
It's probably yes. Well, I've used it several times and I like it more. But still, Novolin does the job. So.
Okay. What do you think of Humulin R?
That's like not ultra short, just like short acting. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it has its own application, but I just don't use it because, well, I see it as the point. We inject insulin, we eat a high carbohydrate and high protein meal, and afterwards we don't need it pretty much. And, in bodybuilding, there are also people who are using long-acting insulins like Lantus, like throughout the day. And everybody who I worked with who tried to experiment with it, I know, all this mTOR and AMPK equation, which became quite popular like in recent years. So we just don't yet understand how it's working, but probably like this constant stimulation of mTOR, it just through some time while you're doing it, it will just compromise your ability to build muscle afterwards. So it probably has to be like peaks. Like anabolic peak and like some catabolic time afterwards. Again, anabolic peak and some time to like catabolize it afterwards. That's just how I see it.
And so when you're having your guys take these ultra rapid acting insulins like that, the danger with that or the side effect that is most often experienced is that the hypoglycemic effects and the brain fog effects, because insulin crosses the blood-brain barrier, are very potent in these guys. So especially with guys that are new to taking insulin and they're taking these fast-acting insulins, they can even just take one IU, and that alone will, make them turn ghost white and be feeling, very comfortable for a while. So how do you have them deal with that?
Well, I think these are the guys who are just, well, they have a pretty wide fantasy world. Well, you have to make yourself believe it is gonna to happen this way, because well, probably 1 IU of insulin, it's how many points of blood sugar? I just don't remember it. It's really impossible to go to hypo if you will give someone like 2 IUs of insulin. It just won't happen. So I've never made anyone go to hypoglycemia because old school bodybuilders, they believe that there is this anabolic age that you have to just inject insulin and then wait for it to come. Just only eat when you're sweating. I don't believe in it. I just don't see where science backs it up. So with conservative dosing, like I said, I've never prescribed anyone more than 8 IUs per shot. It just doesn't happen. You just eat your meal and it's okay. Yeah, everybody is afraid of insulin because all of these stories of these fuckheads who walking walking abortion advertisement, as I call them, like who say that you just have to inject like 50 IUs of insulin like several times a day because that's what the pros do. No, pros don't do it. They don't. They're just consistent with small dosages for prolonged periods of time, and they know how to time it right. Yeah, everybody's afraid because of these horror stories of people passing out and dying. First of all, talking through all these biochemistry cascades, I think it really must be a type of bad luck if a person dies when he's even overdose of insulin, mainly because even if you're in a coma, your heart and your brain can still function on lactate, which you can produce a lot. So it's a really rare scenario. Mostly why people die on insulin, it's because they pass out and they hit their head while they're falling, or they start throwing up while they're on their spine. Yes. Yes, and and sometimes they try to eat and it just stuck in their throat. Like probably what happened to Dallas McCarver. That's probably it, because he was found with pizza boxes around him.
Yeah.
Well, yes. So that's it. I just don't think people should be that very much afraid of it because I don't say that insulin is a death drug. DNP is a death drug basically. Insulin. It's really hard to die on it. You have to be very, very stupid and you have to be unlucky at the same time, which is rare because all the fuckheads are usually lucky.
Yeah, so for you guys that are thinking about using insulin and you want to be as safe as possible with it, you should definitely have a liquid carbohydrate source on hand to deal with hypoglycemia. Like
dextrose, dextrose with BCAAs on your hand. So you drink it, you're okay.
Mm-hmm. That way you don't end up with a Dallas McCarver choking situation.
Yeah, because people who are trying to eat pasta or pizza or anything, that's like it's very hard to swallow. So and people when they're hypoglycemic, they go in this state of hysteria almost. They're afraid to die. Nobody wants to die basically. So yeah, they just try to swallow down the food, which is not great. So yeah, that's kind of a dextrose solution. Well, even sugary solution, it would be also okay. But why should we risk it? Because all this fat accumulation and whatsoever. Stay with dextrose.
Yep, dextrose, very good. All right, Vadim, thank you very much for taking your time out to come talk to everybody listening to the podcast today, bro. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Well, it was great talking to you.